Just like many people love watching action movies or comedies, some people get their joy from watching horror movies. They can watch horror movies at any time, anywhere, even if they are alone. However, those who are not such great fans of horror movies might find them a little scary. They will curl up in bed all alone, covering their heads if anything scary happens. There are certain movies that such people should not even dare watch, or anyone else who gets frightened by horror movies. Today, we go through 5 horror movies that you should not even think of watching if you are alone. Make sure the lights are on, because things might get really scary. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, released in 2022, is the 9th installment in the gritty slasher series. However, each of these releases has had diminishing returns and has struggled to recapture the raw dread of the original 1974 classic. It does not have a revelatory premise, but the movie's uncomfortable aesthetics almost make it feel like a snuff film. The movie is about a group of friends, Lila, Melody, Dante, and Ruth, who moved to Harlow intending to transform the deserted town into a thriving community. Given that they knew next to nothing about the horrors that still haunt this place, they had nothing but good intentions for the place. When they arrive at Harlow, they notice a Confederate flag hanging from a terrible-looking building. As Dante and Melody go into the seemingly abandoned Harlow orphanage, they come across an old woman named Virginia, who claims that she is still the owner of the place. When asked to provide proof, she refused, taunting Dante, a black man, that she meant nothing by the Confederate flag. When the cops were called on her, she fell seriously ill and had to be rushed to the hospital. The policeman and Ruth accompany her in the ambulance. There is also a tall, menacing man who joins them, who had apparently been living with Miss Virginia at the orphanage. He was the last of the woman's boys that she took care of. Miss Virginia does not make it, which is when all hell breaks loose. The tall man turns out to be Bubba Sawyer, better known as Leatherface, and the death of his caregiver unleashes the killer in him. This is a movie that you don't want to watch alone. Intérieur. This is a French horror film from 2007, but one of the most brutal and relenting takes on the home invasion genre. Other home invasion horror movies, such as Funny Games and The Strangers, are also scary and exciting, but none of them is like this one. L'Intérieur, also known as Inside, is a story about a pregnant woman's struggle to survive against a determined assailant. The movie happens on Christmas Eve, when we see an expectant mother, Sarah, preparing to go to the hospital to deliver the baby the following day. This was 4 months after her husband died in a car crash. However, everything takes a turn when she has an unexpected visitor. This crazed woman comes to Sarah's home with only one goal: to take her baby. There is a lot of fighting, bleeding, and use of sharp objects in this film, as this psychotic woman is willing to do anything to perform a nasty C-section and take the baby. There is definitely a lot of bloodshed here. The Night House. If there is someone who knows how to put up a performance, it is Rebecca Hall. Her performance in The Night House perfectly shows how she takes her time to get into character and throws everything into her roles. The Night House starts out as a sad story about grief and being alone. But as the story continues, its creepy and supernatural elements take over. In the movie, we see Beth, played by Hall, having a hard time dealing with the sudden trauma of grief. This is the kind of grief that is accompanied by anger. She is primarily angry at her husband, Owen, who took the boat out one morning and shot himself in the head. She said that he showed no signs of depression, and that it was more of her thing. Also, Beth is expected to just keep unpacking at their lake house as she goes about her daily duties as a teacher. As she opens the boxes and checks through Owen's stuff, she discovers some unusual possessions by him. These include some books that appear to be about the occult and dark arts, and they even have notes in the margin by her husband. This leaves her guessing what he was really into. At the same time, Beth is struggling with her intense nightmares, which mostly happen in the lake house where she now lives alone. Her nightmares seem to be taking her to places, including another mirror house that is across the lake. Here, she discovers some of Owen's darkest secrets. However, things are not as smooth as they seem, and she has to fight for her survival. This is not a movie you should watch alone, because it is both emotional and scary. Hereditary. Ari Aster, a director and writer, only has 2 feature films, but he has managed to make a name for himself in the world of horror. Hereditary, which is his work, shows off Aster's low voice perfectly by combining a story about the occult and the paranormal with a story about a broken family. The movie is mainly about Annie Graham, a miniature artist who lives in Utah with her husband Steve, their 16-year-old son Peter, and their 13-year-old daughter Charlie. It all starts with them at the funeral of Annie's secretive mother, Ellen. Shortly after the burial, Steve tells Annie that Ellen's grave has been desecrated. However, at the same time, Annie thinks that she sees an apparition of Ellen in her workshop. Later on in the movie, Charlie, the young one, is killed as Peter is driving to the hospital. He had gone to a party with Charlie, who ate a cake with nuts, which she was allergic to. Later on, Joan, who is a member of the support group that Annie goes to, somehow convinces Annie to perform a seance so that she can talk to Charlie. However, things go horribly wrong for her because, as she later discovers, she actually unleashed a demon into the family. Many gruesome things happen after this, which is not a sight to see. You should never watch this movie alone, because you will be scared to death. Halloween. Even though this film by John Carpenter is more than 45 years old, it is still one of the most frightening movies ever made in the whole industry. Following this, there have been numerous Halloween sequels and reboots, all of which ensure that Michael Myers remains a permanent fixture of slasher cinema. And even though Michael has become more violent and determined over time, the events of the first film play a significant role in making this one of the most terrifying experiences ever. At this point, Michael is not overanalyzed and feels like an evil man on an unstoppable and indiscriminate rampage. Michael truly feels like the boogeyman in this film, which is terrifying. Whatever you do, do not watch any of these 5 movies alone, or else you will have nightmares for days. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.